All right, it is officially 7:01 according to my BlackBerry smartphone. So I will get us started. Hi, for those of you who are not familiar with me, my name is Dre, and I chair the Outreach and Civic Engagement Committee on the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council here in Central Los Angeles. While I may personally have stances on who I want to see get elected into office, tonight I'm here on behalf of the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council. We are a nonpartisan government organization, and we will not be endorsing or supporting candidates in any races. What is the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council? Well, we are a 35-person board of unpaid elected stakeholders. Cumulatively, the 35 of us represent about 75,000 people in Mid-City West Los Angeles. We try to identify our community's most urgent needs, and we address them by collaborating with City Hall and state legislature to move the needle on things like renters' rights, public safety, electoral equity, and other issues that we feel are important and that our stakeholders have made clear are important to them. We hold community events like these candidate forums. This one's online. Some of them will be in person in the future. And just yesterday, we held a blood drive in conjunction with Cedars Sinai. We are hoping that if you are watching this and live in the Los Angeles area, you will get involved with more of our community events and sign up for our newsletter, which is at midcitywest.org/subscribe. You'll be informed on all of our fun events. Another thing we have is a super duper small budget provided by the city. We predominantly use it for outreach, for putting on community events, and the rest of it goes to giving grants to local nonprofits. We are currently in the midst of a grant making cycle. For more information on that, please email outreach@midcitywest.org. We are always looking for great local projects to fund. So that is what the Mid-City West Neighborhood Council is. But tonight we have with us two gentlemen who are running for California State Assembly. Now, a lot of people are wondering what that is. Basically, when I try to explain California's government, I try to parallel it to our federal government, which people are a little more familiar with. We have our executive branch here in California that includes our governor, our secretary of state, our attorney general, and others. Our judicial branch, which, like the country, we have a California Supreme Court, a Court of Appeals, and others. And then finally, we have our legislative branch. This consists of the California State Senate and our state assembly. Together, the assembly and the Senate, our legislative bodies, are responsible for passing bills, setting the state budget, raising and lowering taxes, and overriding executive vetoes. So tonight we have two candidates here running for state assembly, the lower house and the California state legislature. The California State Assembly has 80 members, so not the hundreds that we have in the US House of Representatives. Each of these people represent 465,000 people. Our state assembly terms are only 2 years. People who are elected to state assembly or state senate can serve a max of 12 years combined in that legislative body. So you have some people who might serve 4 in assembly, 8 in Senate, and then they will be termed out and unable to run for either body again. As I mentioned, what they are responsible for, so the gentlemen we are talking tonight, the future is in their hands as it comes to proposing and voting on bills that will become statewide laws, setting the budget, and again, they will have the ability with their colleagues to override governor vetoes. Some examples of the work that they have done in the past. How the California State Assembly, is broken up similarly again to the US House of Representatives, where the different committees people can serve on. Examples of these committees include education, health, revenue, and taxation. In the past year, meaning coming into effect in 2022, some new bills that have passed include mandatory composting. So you'll be seeing a lot of information sent to your homes recently about how to start separating your compostables from your trash and recyclings. They've made voting by mail permanent, which I personally believe is a fabulous thing in terms of civic engagement. They've reclassified stealthing as sexual assault. For people who are unaware, stealthing is when somebody, without the consent of their partner or partners, removes a condom in the middle of a sexual act. And they've prohibited police from using rubber bullets and tear gas to disperse a protest. In some cases, a law that they made this past year will change the zoning to make it easier for people to build multiple units on lots that were formerly classified as single family. I chose these examples because they kind of represent the breadth of what our California state legislature does, things related to the environment, to personal rights, to housing, and of course, policing. So it's important that you are informed about who is running in these races, and it's important that the people you are voting for align with your beliefs. When do you vote for them? So this is a little tricky. If you paid attention to our city council forum, we explained the way that our city elections work, and they're kind of top twos. So we have a primary in June, and if somebody who's running for city or county office gets 50% plus one vote, they will not go to a runoff and they will automatically win their race. For statewide races, it's a little bit different. The voting timeline will be the same. Our nearest election is June 7th. You can expect your voter guide at the end of this month. Ballots will be sent out May 9th, so you can return them all the way up until June 7th. And the last day to vote for the primary election is going to be, or to register to vote, is going to be May 23rd. In this election, you will be voting for our city, our county, and our state offices. For the state offices, in any race that appears on your June ballot will also appear on your November ballot. The top two vote getters, regardless of party, it is a nonpartisan election, will move to the November primary. Even if one candidate absolutely wallops the field, they are still going to have to campaign all the way through November. And I apologize to Louie and Rick, that sounds utterly exhausting, but we appreciate your commitment. All right, that is a little bit of background and context. I appreciate you helping me or sticking with me while I stutter my way through it. I'm slightly underslept. Here's how the rest of the evening is going to break down. Each candidate who is running here for State Assembly District 51 will give an opening statement. They will each get 90 seconds. We will then move into a long form moderated Q&A. I will be asking candidates questions. Each question will be asked to each candidate, so they will be answering identical questions. We will be taking turns we'll be taking turns in terms of who answers each one first. After the lengthier question, we'll move to a lightning round. These are very quick yes or no questions and short answer questions, which they will get 30 seconds each to answer. From there, each candidate will get an additional 90 seconds of closing statement time. And then we'll kind of wrap up, which will probably just be me bullying you to register to vote, reminding you of important dates, and telling you ways you can get involved in the future. Our chat for tonight is turned off. We want to keep our focus on the candidates, not on the participants, but we appreciate you all being here. In terms of the Q&A, while the questions are pre-written for tonight, I strongly encourage you to type questions for the candidates into the Q&A. They will be able to see them and think about them and answer via their mailing list and their own outreach. Additionally, it will give us ideas for questions for future forums. I ask that the candidates do not answer the Q&As in the Q&A bubble, as that will give one of you an unfair advantage over the other. So, moving forward, we are going to have Rick open our evening tonight, which means that Louie will be going next with their opening statement. Rick, go ahead.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight, and thank you, Louie, for joining as well. My name is Rick Chavez Zbur, and I have most recently been the Executive Director of Equality California, which is the statewide LGBTQ plus civil rights organization. And before that was president of the California Environmental Voters for 7 years. And I'm here because I believe that we share a vision for California, and that I'm the candidate that's best prepared to advance that. What is that vision? It's a California where every person has a roof over their head and where housing is abundant. A California where we invest in our public school system and we're at the top 10% of the states, that rather than at the bottom 10% of the states. A California where every person has high quality, affordable health care and we protect the rights to legal and safe abortion. A California where our social safety net actually cares for our vulnerable and our elders. A California where every person is safe and respected no matter their race, their gender identity, sexual orientation, or faith, and where we basically preserve the California dream for everyone. And finally, a California where we tackle the crisis of climate change with the urgency that both our kids and our planet deserve. I'm proud to be the Democratic Party endorsed candidate in the state, to have the endorsement of Richard Bloom and Senator Allen, of every statewide elected official, including the governor, as well as Ted Lieu and Planned Parenthood, California Environmental Voters, Equality California, and many others. So thank you very much for joining tonight, and I'm very glad to be here.
Thanks so much, Rick. Louis, now take it away. You got your 90.
Hi, thank you, Dre. Thank you, Mid-City West. It's a pleasure to be here. So I am a scientist, an organizer, and an elected representative of my 19,000 neighbors in Central Hollywood. And I have been serving my community by helping mothers with 3-month-old babies, seniors with broken bones, and honorably discharged veterans get off the street. Now, I think we all agree that California can do better than those stories, and I know it will if we send folks with the right experience to represent us in Sacramento. Now, this means people who don't just want to lower rents, but who pay rent. People who don't just know there's a homelessness crisis, but have gotten folks housed, and leaders who don't just believe in science, but understand it. If I'm elected, I'll be the only scientist in both houses of the state legislature, one of just 3 renters, and one of a small number of people who knows what it takes to get someone from a tent into an apartment. Now, when we're facing a housing, homelessness, and climate crisis, those skills make me different from the folks who got us here, and different is what we need. Now, my team knocked on 1,000 doors in Mid-City West over the weekend, and at each one of them, we heard the same story. Everybody's top issues are homelessness, climate change, housing affordability, and public safety. We're going to be asked a bunch of yes/no questions later, which is fine, but we know these are big problems, and I know we can tackle them together, even if we don't agree on absolutely everything. Now, I know how to build coalitions, I know how to have hard conversations, and I'm committed to governing in that spirit. I am here with an open ear and an outstretched arm to be your partner in this mission and to continue working with you no matter what happens in this race. Thank you very much.
I want to thank both of you for keeping that to a tight 90 seconds. I can already tell I like the way this evening is going to unfold. For those of you watching, there were both candidates' websites at the bottom during their opening statements. They will also be visible during their closing statements. I think, as both of them alluded to, you can only learn so much during these types of forums, and I strongly encourage you to learn more about them in their own words from their website. Now, as we move to the long form questions, we will start with a topic that is on a lot of people's minds, COVID-19. So, though many counties and cities are lifting all coronavirus 19 related restrictions, including mask and vaccine mandates, a February 2022 poll by the Public Policy Institute of California showed COVID-19 still remains voters' top issue going into the June and November elections. Do you believe that the state government is doing enough, not enough, or too much to reduce the spread of COVID-19? Candidates, you'll each get 90 seconds, and we'll be starting this round with Louis.
Yes, I think this is a fantastic question. And as a scientist, I have been continually disappointed with California's response to COVID. We continually said that we were going to be led by the science, and I don't think that's what happened. So I don't believe the state is doing enough to stop the spread of COVID. And I think we haven't been honest enough about our limitations of knowledge about the virus and about the interactions of it in a complex ecosystem of society. And we also haven't been honest about the real trade-off between economic activity and COVID. I mean, this was a discussion I think we should have been having for 2 years now. And I think that our leadership failed us in this. So one of the things I would do if I'm elected is make sure everybody knows my goals for leadership. I think the best thing we could have done when COVID hit was say, we got to get kids back in school this fall. That is a clear vision. It's a just vision. And because so much of society is organized around schools, it would have really helped us understand what do we need to do to make sure we are getting healthy as a society and we're making progress towards a goal, towards normalcy. So I believe that there's, right now is a challenging time. We know that many people, thank God, have become vaccinated, but we know we still have immunocompromised folks out there. And right now, we don't know the effect of new incoming variants. So I believe that it's still time to be cautious. When I'm in a public space indoors, I try to wear my mask. And I think also we haven't gotten through the fact that some folks are going to need economic help getting out of it. So I'll leave it there and end.
Thank you. Rick, same question.
So I think that Governor Brown has gotten it about right. I know that these are challenging issues. I think that he has done a good job at listening to the scientists. Are there things that he could have done a bit better? Yeah, there are some things he could have done a bit better. I mean, we stood up to Governor Newsom when we thought that he wasn't doing enough to test some vulnerable communities and make sure that that test data was apparent. And the reason why that's important is because if you don't actually know what testing rates are like, you don't know whether the public health response is working. And that was a particularly big problem with the LGBTQ community. And we actually had to pass legislation to force the government to do that. Have we done enough to really protect our workers? No, I think we could have done a bit more. There were debates with between the teachers unions and the teachers, and I think that we didn't do enough to get teachers vaccinated quickly enough to protect them and get our kids back to school as quickly as possible. And then I think, frankly, we haven't done enough on the vaccination front. I think we've done public education programs, but I think we could have done things that would have made it more likely that people would have gotten vaccinated faster and prevented some of these variants. But overall, I think Governor Newsom and our elected officials, we're dealing with a really incredible set of challenges. And I'm glad that we lived in California and that we had Governor Newsom with us, and think that he, there were some areas where he could have improved, but I think he got it about right.
Thank you so much for both of your thoughtful responses. Sticking on the topic of health, this past January, Assemblymember Colorado worked to revive support for Assembly Bill 1400, which has also been known for years as CalCare. This bill would have mandated a government-run universal healthcare system in California. The plan was estimated to cost between $314 and $319 billion annually. To be clear, that's more than the entirety of the current California state budget, which is about $286 billion. Colorado's plan to pay for it was by instituting the biggest tax increase in state history, with a focus on increasing taxes on businesses that were earning more than $2 million a year annually and individuals earning around $150,000 or more a year annually. Though the bill died before making it to the floor, supporters vowed to continue pushing for CalCare until it passes. Do you believe a mandatory single-payer healthcare system is the best way to provide healthcare to California residents? If so, how do you propose paying for it and making the transition? If not, what changes do you propose to our current healthcare system, if any? Reversing the order, we'll be starting off with Rick this time.
So first of all, I believe that one of our key goals for government should be to make sure that everyone has universal health care and that we have high quality care that everyone has is available to them. I'm someone who believes that single payer health care is that we should be facilitating that and that we should be looking to a path towards single payer health care. It's a very complicated issue, and obviously the reason why AB 1400 didn't pass was because of the funding issues that you flagged in your question. Those funding issues, we have to replace the funding that comes from employer-based healthcare. We had pulled in Medicare into the program, so we needed a federal waiver for that. And frankly, the reason why it didn't pass, I think, was because they didn't get the funding mechanisms right. We need to make sure that however we fund this, it is not regressive. And I think the funding to individuals at those low levels was frankly going to be a regressive tax system, and we need to find other ways of doing that. It probably needs to be something that remains some kind of employment-based tax in order to do that. The other thing about single payer is we have to get the details right, and we need strong consumer protections as part of that. One of the things that we used to get calls all the time out of Equality California were people who could not get their specialty drug coverage from either Medicare or Medi-Cal. And under a single payer program, we actually need to make sure that there's strong consumer protections to make sure that people can get the care that they need as we adopt this. So I'm supportive.
Thank you.
I'm sorry.
Thanks, Rick. It apparently wants to give you 90 more seconds, but we're going to move on to Louis. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I definitely believe that it is part of government's duty to ensure that everybody is universally covered with healthcare. And I also think it's important just to set the scale of where we are right now. 35% of Californians are already on Medi-Cal, and I think probably another 15% are on Medicare. So a lot of folks are actually already getting government subsidized healthcare. In fact, we should just set these numbers. The state budget works out to the California government spending $16 per resident per day. So it's just important to remember that California is a big state. So when we're trying to do stuff for everybody, the numbers are going to sound big, but we should talk about it in terms of the actual payout per person. Now, I think in terms of this, I agree with Rick that we ultimately want to be at a place where we can say that there's a uniform straight line system, single payer healthcare, and I'm open to the path of how to get there. I think one good way to do this, and was talked about during the last presidential cycle, was a public option. So if we set up a public option and it becomes popular and competitive, people will want to jump onto it. Its bargaining power will grow, its purchasing power will grow, and it will be able to sort of more organically and over a longer timescale, so it isn't a shock to the system, get us to a place where we have a single payer healthcare system. So I think that's where I would go with this. I don't know if there's that much daylight between me and Rick, but I see a public option as a good bridge to where we want to go.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. I love how in agreement you guys are, but I got to tell you, the teeth got to come out for this next question related to homelessness. And Louis, we will be starting with you on this one.
Great.
Both of you say confronting homelessness is a top priority. How would you describe your opponent's plan to solve the issue, and why do you believe your plan is better?
Okay, well, I will start by saying this is exactly where I think I have the right experience to lead at this moment, because I have been on the ground. I founded the Seal a Neighborhood Homeless Coalition in Hollywood. I was out just last weekend trying to get folks indoors. I ran the Hollywood Homeless Count in 2021 and helped out with Mid-City West. I know y'all have 278 unhoused people because I tabulated the data. That work was recognized by the LA Times and Beverly Press. And I also have helped found Hollywood Forward, which is the official community voice for a $116 million mental health pilot that's going in Hollywood, which we successfully advocated to get. I like what I see on Rick's website saying we got to get all, if we actually mean that we need a sort of dramatic social emergency mobilization, then yeah, let's get students of social work and get students of psychology from our great universities out on the street. The VA is right next to UCLA. UCLA is in district. UCLA has a great medical center. We should get those students out into the field so they're contributing to our fight here. But here's why I think I have the better plan. We have to do this in stages. We got to cut inflow so that 83,000 people aren't becoming homeless each year. That's why I am in favor of renter protections and renter insurance. We also have to speed up outflow. That's making sure we're cutting the red tape to building permanent supportive housing and wraparound housing for folks with serious mental illness, which we need state mandates to put forward. And lastly, we don't have street social services. They don't exist. We got to fund them through Medi-Cal reforms. And I agree with the Blue Ribbon Commission that there is no authority for this, which is why I'm in favor of starting a state Department of Homelessness so people know where the buck stops.
Awesome. Wow, that was well timed. Thanks. Rick, you have your 90 seconds. May you use them as fully.
Well, I'm not going to attack Louis because everything that he said I agree with. And I think I would sort of, I get the advantage of being able to sort of add on to it a little bit. One of the things I think we really need to do is recognize that our government systems don't work on this issue. I mean, this issue is in part a national issue where we have people coming to California because of our weather. It's also a regional issue where we have 88 jurisdictions with different homelessness plans and strategies and 15 council districts and 5 supervisorial districts all doing different things. We don't have accountability in government. And one of the things I think we need to do is focus on what we can do in California to make sure that we've got a government that's accountable, that they actually have goals on getting people off the street, and that they're being held accountable. One of the key parts of two other key parts of my plan, as I think Louis mentioned, is that I want to create a California Housing Corps, AmeriCorps program to really help build trust with people that are unhoused and help move them into the wraparound services that they need. I think that's going to be an important part of this. At Equality California, we've done a lot on homelessness. We've passed a number of bills now, really that created an LGBTQ youth homeless division in the California state government. We do cultural competency training in homeless shelters across the city and across the state. And I really think that one of the things we need to do is really focus on the tragedy of foster youth, 25% of which become homeless when they age out of foster care. And we really need to, that's a pipeline that we need to stop.
Thank you. Fabulous answers again from both of you. I'm got to be honest. I'm don't know who I'm going to vote for at this point. Hopefully I'll get a little more clarity as we move on. Our next question will be related to gun safety. So recently, in a national headline making move, our state Senate, which is the other half of the California legislative body other than the state assembly, put forward Bill 1327. This bill, which is largely understood to be a reaction to Texas's restrictive abortion law that allows civil action against anybody involved in aiding a woman to get an abortion, allows for civil action in California against any person who brings, sells, operates, or possesses an assault weapon or .50 BMG rifle in the state of California. However, this law would become invalidated upon the invalidation of the Texas abortion law. While many women's rights activists applaud the proposed California legislature, many gun safety activists wonder what the real and actionable firearms-related legislature can be moved forward independently of the policies in other states. If elected, what changes would you make to legal ownership of guns? And Rick, we will start with you on this one.
So first of all, I think this is one of the areas where I have a history of very strong leadership in the gun safety movement. Equality California, when I was the leader of the organization, we were the first major national LGBTQ civil rights organization to take on gun safety as one of our key priorities after the shooting in Orlando in the Pulse nightclub, which affected so many LGBTQ people and people of color and others. And so we have been fighting. We partnered with Governor Newsom when he was lieutenant governor on the proposition. We partnered with the legislative leadership and with a number of the gun safety groups, the Brady Coalition and others, to pass a package of gun safety laws that passed California to limit high capacity magazines, to limit assault weapons, to put greater restrictions in gun checks and at gun shows. We need to continue doing more of that. We have guns coming into California from Nevada and other parts of the state. It's still very easy for people that have mental illness and have histories of violence to obtain guns. And so we need to continue moving forward with additional gun safety laws to protect our people. I do want to say that with respect to the example that you said, I do have some concerns about sort of tying gun safety to abortion rights. And so that's something that I think they're issues that are sort of related, but
Thank you. All right, Louis.
Okay, yeah, so I want to start by saying governments cannot enact bad faith legislation. The law in Texas is bad and we shouldn't mimic it because there are real steps we can take today that will actually help get guns off the street. On my website, one of my priorities for criminal justice is aggressive gun buybacks. There are 9 million handguns in California. And if you do the numbers, we would have to buy back about 4,500 of them to prevent one homicide. That means each gun, if you work out, there's unfortunately an actuarial value for a human life. That means each gun we could cost society $17 million. At that rate, it would be worth, paying $4,000 per gun to get them off the street. LAPD does gun buybacks, but it buys back an average of 500 guns per year at $100 to $200 per gun. I think we really need to scale this program. It should not be an afterthought. It should be a full-on initiative to get guns off the street. And I think that we can pair this with, technological reforms, making sure that a gun can only be fired by the rightful owner in terms of pairing it with like an RFID bracelet. And when I talk to LAPD leaders, what their concern is 3D printed guns. Now, I don't know the best policy to address 3D printed guns. It seems like a very thorny problem, but I think the legislature should focus here, should focus its brains on this. We have the creativity to solve this. And if we did, we would prevent deaths. So I'm focusing on those three things.
Thank you so much. Moving forward, while kind of Texas is, I think the meme saying is occupying space in my head rent-free, we will move on to the economy. After the release of the 2020 census, for the first time in history, California lost a congressional seat. Texas gained 2. Florida gained 1. The implications of our decade-long stagnated population growth and then our loss of residents during COVID-19 extend beyond legislative representation and directly impact our local economies, especially as we disproportionately see big businesses and wealthy individuals moving out of state. What do you plan to do to keep businesses and wealthy individuals from leaving California for states that are perceived to be more business friendly or tax friendly, like Texas or Florida? Louis?
This is absolutely the #1 concern I have. We're talking about gun control. We're talking about women's rights to choose, LGBTQ rights. We do not want to be sending valuable California legislators to Texas, where they will be gerrymandered into districts that do not agree with our values. To keep people in the state and to keep our economy thriving, we have to make it more affordable to live here. Let me talk about 8051, this district. We have 360,000 jobs. And would you believe that more than 4 out of 5 of the people who hold those jobs cannot live here? 20% of them are driving over 25 miles to get to work. We are pushing our labor force away. And we rank 69th on this score out of 80 assembly districts, even though we have the 5th most jobs. We have to get those jobs back, because if they decide to go elsewhere, our economic vibrancy is at risk. So we got to build homes near jobs and transit so we can push back on climate change and build economic security at the same time. People won't be paying $6 per gallon in gas plus parking to bring us their energy and their labor. They won't be adding traffic to our streets and getting in car accidents that are killing people. So we're going to reduce economic inequality as we also reduce climate inequity. So I am all in favor of, and also it should be noted that the majority of people who left between censuses were working class. So I think we have to get down to fundamentals here. We can't go on with a socioeconomic inequality index the same as Zambia. We have to make it so that at least the state average number of workers can afford to live in this district and power us. That's 30%. It's still too low, but I want to get us there by the time I'm out of office.
Thank you. Rick?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the biggest things we can do, and I think Louis alluded to this, is really focus on the housing affordability crisis that we have here in California. Again, most people that are coming into employment age now cannot afford to live here, and they have to travel long distances. That's a climate change issue. It's also, it's also an issue of really whether we're going to tackle poverty, which I know that is a key goal that I think is one of our responsibilities as members of government. In California, 18% of our public lives below the functional poverty line, and another 18% is just above it. And the main reason for that is because of the very high cost of housing, and that makes California not competitive from a business perspective. It makes it hard for us to retain employees here and for businesses to locate here. I also think from a climate change perspective that we really need to focus on keeping the jobs that moving to a clean energy economy will create, and we need to keep them here in California. We need to make sure that we are looking at the impediments to have manufacturing facilities here in the state, that we're building the electric vehicles, we're building the electric cars, we're building the wind energy, we're building the renewable energy resources and the battery resources here in the state of California, so that we're basically adding to the business base. And so, if we want basically California to be more business friendly, we need to actually think about and talk to our businesses and make sure that we're basically doing the things we need to do to sort of keep them here in the state.
Thank you, gentlemen. Moving forward, as I said earlier, I chair the Outreach and Civic Engagement Committee. So for me, one of my big issues is civic engagement. I apologize if I fumbled a bit through the start and the explanation of our local government. I think my own eyes have glazed over a little bit from explaining it to so many people so many times. When I was planning this forum, I reached out to dozens of Angelenos in Assembly District 51. I first asked people to rank themselves on a scale of 1 to 10 based on how much they believed that they personally understood about how local and state government works. I then asked questions about our state assembly. I was not surprised to learn that almost nobody could name their state assembly district or their current representative. However, I was somewhat surprised to learn that even people who rank themselves very high in their own understanding of state civics did not know what our state assembly does or how the actions of our state assembly might affect their daily lives. If elected, you will speak on behalf of over 465,000 Angelenos. How do you fairly plan to represent so many voices when these voices might not be aware of who you are or even how to reach out to you with their concerns? How do you plan to get in touch with the needs of your constituents, especially the ones who feel very divorced from the legislative process? Rick?
So, obviously this is one of the challenges that every elected official has, especially representing so many people. I'm going to be an active, engaged member of the assembly. And I think just as, you see me today in almost every forum that I can make, I will continue to do that as a member of the legislature. But in addition to that, I want to set up some systems where actually I'm hearing from people on the ground, on an ongoing basis as I'm serving. I've already said that I'll be forming a number of Assembly District 51 advisory committees. One will be on housing and homelessness, another will be on climate change and environmental justice, another will be on public safety, and another will be on social justice and civil rights. And so those are at least some of the key ones, and we'll form others as issues arise in the district. And I think that's one of the ways that I will sort of keep in touch with the district. Also plan to hold town halls. I think it's now getting to a point where people are feeling more comfortable coming out and congregating now. And so town halls will be a big feature. It's not a whole lot different than, what I used to do at Equality California, where, we were trying to keep in touch with the LGBTQ community across the state. I did town halls probably 2 and 3 a month before COVID across the state, listening to members of our community, listening to what the challenges they're facing, and listening to the ideas that they have about what they'd like state government to do. And so I expect to do that as a member of the assembly.
Thank you so much. Those are some great new ideas. Louis.
I think this is where my experience as a neighborhood council person is going to come in to be very, very important. So I already get calls from my neighbors, at all times of day, asking for help because they don't know who to call when there's a homelessness issue. In fact, there is very few people to call. That should not be the case. They also don't know sometimes who to call to get a piece of trash removed, or when sanitation is coming around, all this stuff. So I am dedicated to making government and my office more accessible. I am endorsed by Josh Kirpies, Representative Bloom's district director, because he comes to every single CHNC meeting. Every single one I've been to, he's been there. And I have built a relationship with him and know how to disseminate the information from his office to my stakeholders because of that. Now, the district we're going to represent is extremely diverse, especially socioeconomically. Santa Monica, which has coastal issues. Beverly Hills, which has a very large elderly population. West Hollywood, LGBTQ community, large Russian and Ukrainian population of elderly folks. I know how hard it is to get in front of elderly folks because when COVID hit, I led an effort that called 2,700 of them and then wrote letters to more because the only way to get in touch with the government was online. And these folks are not online. We have to massively rethink how people engage with government. And as I am doing this, I'm going to hire a diverse set of staff from each of these issues who can represent, from a standpoint of lived experience, the interests of each of these communities. I too am going to set up advisory councils to make sure I'm hearing from folks what they need as opposed to what I impose on them. And I'm going to come to every meeting I can.
Great. Thank you so much. Continuing on the topic of governance, for those who were listening to my How Government Works at the beginning, you might recall that our assembly member terms are only 2 years. To get anything done in that short a period of time, you really have to be ready from the get-go. If elected, do you have a specific piece of legislature in mind that you are ready to begin championing on day one of your term? Please be specific. Louis, go ahead.
I got 4. First thing, tenants' right to counsel. Everybody facing eviction should have the right to a lawyer. I also want to start a rental insurance fund so that emergency hospital bills don't turn into evictions. But that's a new idea for me. So renters' right to counsel. Number 2 plan on day 1. We need housing goals for housing with wraparound support with folks with serious mental illness. Now, housing is the #1 request for family members of people with depression or schizophrenia. We know how heavily impacted our unhoused community is by these ailments. LA County was approached by the state with Project Home Key dollars to buy board and care facilities, special facilities that are dropping like flies because they're being defunded that do care for these people. It didn't use them to buy those board and care facilities. That should never happen again. We need RENA-like goals, for those of you who know the Regional Housing Needs Assessment, for housing with wraparound services for this most at-risk population. I also wanted to fund mental health and social worker first responders in every community so that the right resource to address a crisis shows up in 2 minutes when you're in trouble or you see someone else is in trouble, as opposed to 2 hours with LAPD or 2 months like with LAHSA. And then finally, I have a 4th, and now I am losing it because I've talked too much, but we'll leave it at that. That was 3. Oh yeah, no, sorry, matching grants for public transit. Sorry, that's it. I want to make sure that we're matching, the state's matching municipal dollars 1-to-1 when it comes to adding more buses and trains and operators to existing lines. Thanks so much.
I'm very impressed with your memory and your way to really pull that 4th one in there. Rick, go ahead.
So the first, it depends on what happens this year in the legislature, but really picking up on one of the key climate bills. One of the things is we really need to be ready for a transition to electric vehicles in our city by 2035. And we need to basically make sure that all of that electric charging infrastructure is just in terms of where it's located so that people who park on the street and live in apartment buildings can actually charge cars when they're there. And so actually coming up with a strategy and the funding for that is something that I really want to focus on. I want to focus on a bill that it's eluded us at Equality California, that basically would require that our schools have mandatory LGBTQ plus cultural competency training for all teachers and certificated school staff. LGBTQ kids drop out of school at 4 times the rate normal kids, and basically it's because our teachers who are well-meaning are not trained in terms of identifying these at-risk youth and helping make sure that they stay in school. In terms of homelessness, I want to focus on foster youth. We really need to stop this epidemic of kids that are turning 18, becoming homeless, 25% of whom become homeless. I mean, it's just a tragedy. I mean, part of addressing homelessness is also addressing the pipeline into homelessness. And, when a kid turns 18, they don't have the same kind of supportive family that other kids do. And we need to make sure that there's a program that helps them get into community college, helps them get a job, and helps keep them off the street. I have some other ideas, but I'll stop there since I'm running out of time.
Thank you for respecting my 90-second limit. I appreciate that. I did not consent to more than 90 seconds. Moving on, you actually kind of set me up with your answer there, Rick, when you spoke about electric chargers. One thing that is on everybody's mind that both of you have mentioned multiple times tonight is the environment and climate change and what a kind of existential crisis this is for us. One thing specifically in California that's been talked about for a long time is high-speed rail. It's been 14 years since California voters approved a $10 billion bond to build high-speed rail connecting Los Angeles and San Francisco. In the almost decade and a half since the approval, we have not seen meaningful headway made on what has been called the best thing we can do from an economic and environmental standpoint in our state. Many blame political infighting and the inability of the state to tackle any sort of large-scale project. If elected, do you plan to advance this project and others related to climate change? Please be specific in the other projects that you look to advance, and please be specific in how you believe you can help wrangle some of the infighting and holdups that we have seen on this project and others. Rick, go ahead.
So first of all, I'm proud to be endorsed, was the first candidate in the state to be endorsed by California environmental voters as the environmental candidate in this race. I was also one of the first people in the environmental community to stand up in favor of high-speed rail at a time when it was really controversial within the environmental movement. I've written op-ed pieces, have been quoted in the LA Times supporting that. The reality is that we don't have the same political support for this now as we did when Governor Brown was in office. And so we have some convincing to do. I mean, part of this is about, I think, changing hearts and minds about something that we know is something that's going to be important, both important from a climate change perspective as well as the way we're thought of in the world, and making sure that we're adopters of technology that is basically in place all over the world. So I am in charge of, fully in favor of that. Other big things that we need to do from a climate perspective, we need offshore wind. We need it like 10 years ago. We need to basically accelerate the development of the port and basically permitting of offshore wind resources so that we can move off of dirty fossil fuels in the state. And we also need to tie together our transmission grids from Northern and Southern California. If we want to move off of fossil fuels, we need to be able to move towards a clean energy future. And some of that is tying together our transmissions grids. It's also accelerating both distributed and industrial scale battery use. It's a whole host of things that we need to do, and we need to do it very quickly given the urgency of climate change.
Thank you so much. Louis?
And again, I think this is where my experience and perspective as a scientist also matters. I'm endorsed by a Nobel Prize winning physicist, and that's because I have come up thinking about technology, systems, complex questions. And I think that's the experience we're going to need when we're facing a scientific challenge like climate change. So the high-speed rail problem, I think, is indicative of a larger issue we have where we come from a legacy, a very important legacy of protecting our natural environment. We have lots of hillside in this district. We have lots of coastline. We need to protect those natural resources. But the laws written to protect them shouldn't treat people as pollution, and it shouldn't treat initiatives that are clearly good for the environment as regulatory aberrations that need to be shut down. So I think we have to focus on our regulatory regime in general. In our cities, I think this comes down to making sure that we're housing people and not cars. So we're rethinking whether or not we need minimum parking requirements. I oppose those. I think it comes down to making sure, like I say, that we're building more buses and trains on existing lines. That generates induced demand, so more people will take them. Infill housing construction, putting more homes near jobs and businesses is the number 1 or 2 climate move we could make in most zip codes in this area. I am for that. I want to make it legal to build homes on all commercial zone land in the state. I support the Livable Communities Initiative in our district here. And when it comes to solar, we cannot have a discussion without batteries and battery storage and connecting those batteries to the grid so their power can be shared equitably.
You guys have made it through the long form questions, but for people who watched our previous forum, the lightning round is where it really gets dicey. We'll be moving quickly through these. To give an example, each candidate will answer each question. Whoever's name is listed first on the bottom of the slide or to the left at the bottom will answer first. And the example question would be, I will ask, do you like ice cream? Louis?
Yes.
Rick?
Double yes.
Ooh, so I will ask that you keep just to a yes or no, no matter how much you love ice cream, which I will say triple yes that I also love ice cream. All right, moving forward, starting off our lightning round, our first question, yes or no? Do you support legalizing sports gambling statewide? Rick?
No.
Louis?
No.
Yes or no? Do you support state subsidies for private individuals who install solar panels? Louis?
Yes.
Rick?
Yes.
Yes or no? Do you support statewide COVID vaccine mandates for employees and contractors of the state? Rick?
Yes.
Louis?
Yes.
Yes or no? Will you support a statewide anti-BDS resolution that would apply to businesses, state funds, primary schools, and public universities? Louis?
Yes.
Rick?
Absolutely.
Yes or no? Do you support decriminalizing psychedelics? Rick?
Yes.
Louis?
No.
All right, the Burning Man crowd will probably have a lot to say about that. Yes or no? Do you support raising the minimum wage to over its current level of $15 an hour? Louis?
Yes.
Rick,
Yes.
yes or no? Do you support the UC system's proposal requiring incoming students to take a semester of the liberated ethnic studies curriculum? Rick,
Yes.
Louis,
Yes.
yes or no? If you win and become termed out of state legislature, do you have further political ambitions? Louis,
Yeah.
Rick,
No.
yes or no? If you do not win this election, do you see yourself running for a different office in the next election cycle? Rick,
Probably not. No.
Louis,
Yeah.
yes or no? If invited, would you join a California Legislative Jewish Caucus trip to Israel? Louis,
Yeah.
Rick,
Yes.
yes or no? Do you plan to support adaptive reuse of already existing buildings for housing? Rick,
Yes.
Louis,
100%. Yeah.
yes or no? Do you support giving non-citizen residents the right to vote in statewide elections? Louis,
No.
Rick,
No.
yes or no? Do you support decriminalizing sex work? Rick,
Yes.
Louis,
Yes.
yes or no? Should the state get land use authority during a declared state of emergency related to homelessness? Louis,
Yeah.
Rick,
Yes.
yes or no? Do you support giving public dollars to private contractors to build affordable housing? Rick,
Yes.
Louis,
Yes.
yes or no? Do you consider yourself anti-capitalist? Louis,
No.
Rick,
No.
yes or no? Will you commit to championing free public transit statewide? Rick,
Eventually.
Louis,
Yes.
yes or no? Do you support using state dollars to provide abortions for women who travel to California from states with restrictive legislatures? Louis,
Yes.
Rick,
Absolutely.
yes or no? Do you support safe drug sites across the state? Rick,
Yes.
Louis.
Yes.
All right, you survived the daunting lightning round. I will say I'm very inspired by both of you. So I'm going to add another question. Just think about it. You don't need to answer now, but yes or no, whichever one of you wins, will you hire me to help you bring your vision to reality? But now moving on to the short answer section. For each of these, you guys will each get 30 seconds to answer the questions. And I think they're pretty self-explanatory. So the first one, for those of you who remember, when you become an assembly member, you join a standing committee. Some examples I gave were healthcare, there are ones related to the environment, there are ones related to taxing. So Louis and Rick, we're going to ask which standing committees you are most interested in joining. Rick, you have 30 seconds to tell us which ones and why.
First is budget. Obviously, you can always tell what your values are by opening your checkbook, and obviously that has so much ability impact in so many areas. That would be my top choice. Also interested in serving on committees related to the environment and public education. The environment, because climate change is one of my key areas. Addressing housing and homelessness are part of that. And then public education, obviously that is the ticket to the California dream and opportunity for folks.
Thanks so much. Louis, if this will let me switch to you. There you go.
I am on neighborhood council. I am keen on climate change, and housing and homelessness are my core priorities. So housing, community development, local government, and utilities and energy. I will say I'm also become really fascinated by rural issues, and I'd like to explore how I could help out with that.
Fantastic. And you cede your 11 seconds?
I so see them.
Great. Moving on to the next one. 30 seconds, and I know this is complex, so it's kind of either 30 seconds or 30 minutes. How can the state fast track affordable housing? Louis.
Okay, yeah, we really got to get out of our own way. We got to go from top to bottom and make sure that our laws align with our values. So this is going to entail nuanced permitting reforms. It's also going to entail thinking about cutting corruption by taking politicians out of the planning process, renter protections. But I think streamlining new permitting and new tax exempt bonds for affordable housing, finding ways to make sure that we're incentivizing the production of these key things through novel financial mechanisms, because we know the light tech housing credit, which is how they usually do it, is very, very competitive.
Thank you, Rick. See what you can do in 30 seconds.
So first of all, I mean, finding mechanisms for more funding to provide for local governments an ability to fund more affordable housing. This was really hit hard when community redevelopment agencies were taken away under Governor Brown, and that we've really uninvested in affordable housing. The other thing is I think we need to focus on areas where there's more consensus and get out of this tit for tat that we've had here in Southern California. I mean, we know that there's consensus about building along transit corridors and job heights, and we can do that without impacting single family neighborhoods.
Great, thank you. All right, we now have a final question. It's only you're gonna get 3 kind of words or short phrases to answer it. And kind of we're hoping for you to sum up who you are via your priorities. So in the order on the bottom, starting with Louis, using only those 3 short phrases in no particular order, what are the 3 most important issues, not just you, but you believe the entire state assembly needs to focus on? Louis?
Homelessness, climate, and affordability.
Rick?
Homelessness, climate, and justice.
Fantastic. Guys, that was absolutely great. Now I'll give you a second to have a breath, take a drink of water before you each deliver your 90-second closing statements. Because we started with Rick at the top, we're going to start with Louis here and close out with Rick on the evening. Louis, give me a thumbs up when you're ready.
I'm ready to go. Let's do it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so this is my vision for California, and you need to know it because it's going to be my North Star if I'm elected to lead this district. In my California, we can live near our jobs, and that's because housing is abundant and affordable. Our communities are all diverse in identity and income. The schools in those communities prosper because we invest in our future, and so our children. Dignity, health, and prosperity are the inheritance of everybody, no matter what you look like or who you love, and our systems see us not as problems, but as people. Now, I have said a lot of stuff tonight, and some of you may disagree with me on some of it, but I know we agree that California can do better. And when it does, it will be a place where kids can afford to raise grandkids near grandparents, where you won't drive an hour to get home from work, and nobody will fall through the gaps in a broken social safe net and land outside your front door. I'm running because I have the right experience to get us closer to that vision, and every bill I see will be judged based on how well it does that. Compromise is going to be key to success here, but capitulation is not an option. I am here because I know my community is hurting. I stood up and saw it 3 years ago, and I decided to serve because I knew my skills could help. I know we have the strength to move forward. I see it every day in my neighbors and every day in Mid-City West, where I've had the pleasure of working with you guys. I'm asking you to add your strength to mine by giving me your vote on June 7th, but I'll be here to continue the work no matter what, as your neighbor and as your friend. So thank you very much, everybody.
Thank you. Rick, now if you would like to present your closing statement.
Well, thank you everyone for joining me tonight. You know, I am a son of a high school dropout who went to work in the steel mills in Chicago and went back to school on the GI Bill after serving the Korean War, and a mother that grew up in a small farming community south of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I believe that public service is a noble calling. And the reason why I'm running for this office is because I thought that this, at the tail end of my career, this is the best way that I can contribute to some of the problems that are facing California, and that I could have the greatest impact. I'm proud to have, you know, the strongest endorsements in this race: the governor, every statewide elected official, every Democrat on the Board of Supervisors, all the key organizations that fight for all of us: Planned Parenthood, NARAL, California Environmental Voters, Equality California, the LGBT caucus, the Latino caucus, Richard Bloom, Ben Allen, Ted Lieu, Adam Schiff, and many, many others. And the reason for that isn't because I'm important, it's because I've been knocking on their door for 2 decades. You know, I'm someone who believes in facts, I believe in science, and I believe in experience. And I agree with a lot of what Louis says, that we do have to make different decisions, but being successful in making different decisions means changing hearts and minds. It means building consensus. It means doing the hard work of legislating. And I think given my 20 years at Equality California and California Environmental Voters, I have the experience to get things done for this district. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that, Rick. I do want to say you are important to me, at least. So whoever's telling you you're not important, don't listen to them. Now to wrap up, I'll do this as quick as I can. I know we've hit 8 o'clock. For those of you watching who don't know your assembly district, they have shifted. So if you go to the government assembly district finder, it will tell you what your assembly district is from now until the end of the year. But what you will be voting on is your assembly district that comes into effect after this election. If you email us at outreach@midcitywest.org, we will do a little magic and let you know what your current assembly district is, who your current assembly person is, and what district you will be voting on next year, or this year for next year. If you're not sure if you're registered to vote, that is okay. If you've moved and you're not sure where you're registered to vote, the safest thing you can do is re-register to vote. Head to registertovote.ca.gov. Expect the ballots to arrive automatically in about a month from now. And make sure you return your ballot either via mail, drop it in a ballot box, or go vote in person no later than June 7th. If you are inspired by this forum to get more involved in local government, as I said, neighborhood councils are a great starting point. At Mid-City West, we are always looking for stakeholders to volunteer for events. We're looking for stakeholders to join our board, where they're able to vote on everything except for funding motions. Find out more about these opportunities by following our social media. Our handles are listed here at Mid-City West LA on Instagram, at Mid-City West on Twitter and Facebook. And really the best thing you can do is subscribe to our mailing list, where we won't spam you. About once a month, you'll get an email letting you know about our monthly meetings. They're always open to the public and on Zoom. They're a really nice thing to tune into and figure out what's going on with your community. And again, you do have a chance to lend your voice on every issue on which we vote, things from planning to things like civil rights issues that we are trying to get legislation advanced on. If you have any questions about this or anything else, please email us. You will hit me directly if you email outreach@midcitywest.com. That is about it. Thank you so much to Louie and Rick for being here tonight. But more so, thank you guys for running for office. Both of you really did present compelling visions. It's clear that you're both intelligent, articulate, and are ready to fight on behalf of everybody here in AB 51. I'm really excited about this race. I'm really inspired by both of you, and I'm really inspired by your commitments to social services and your career so far and moving forward. So thank you again for being here. Looking forward to doing this again after the primary. And I wish you both luck in your campaigns through November. Good night, everybody. Take care.